And no, when I talk about weapons, I don't mean sticks and stones. I mean gas, tanks, and planes, for f***'s sake. Hi. Yes, we're talking about the weapons used in the various battles across the Great War debacle. We got a couple. I'm not gonna give you the details. Yes, the background, but not the details. I ain't into guns like that. So they are planes, machine guns, rifles, bayonets, hand grenades, mobile field guns, barbed wire, though I'm not sure if you can classify it as a weapon. It's more of an offensive weapon. Imagine if the barbed wire was as deadly to humans as a Venus flytrap plant is to insects. But anyways, that's besides the point. Poison gas, tanks, and flamethrowers, which is crazy to think about, like all of that, and it's just like constantly getting worse. Anyway, the great powers as planes, remember that's Great Britain, Germany, France, Italy, Russia, and Austria-Hungary. They were made of wood, cloth, and all of which would be tied together by piano wire. And oh boy, what a time to be alive. I mean, just imagine how exhilarating it would be to fly on a wooden plane with an open cockpit while being snuggled up in your favorite knitted sweater, gloves, and trusty helmets. But not because of protection against fire or fall damage or whatever. Nah, that's so yesterday. It's to prevent you from freezing to death. If you're looking for adventure and seeking thrills, go on a realistic WW1 plane ride, and you will be sure to receive all, but not limited to, unreliable engine flying, no parachutes, and reduction to subhuman attributes such as being the literal bird of the army. All for the low price of $3.99. Well, they weren't actually not only the eyes of the army, but they were used as fighter jets. They would be used in dogfights, which would fire at the enemy trenches. FYI, lots of these pilots were inexperienced, so a lot of them were in and out permanently. The Air Force, I guess you could call it, grew from hundreds of planes to 100,000 planes by the end of the war in 1918, for the great powers at least. But it had fallen by 50,000 men too, so sad. Secondly, the next thing, there's hand weapons. We've talked about aircraft, now we're talking about hand weapons. Well, some of them at least. We got rifles, bayonets, which we talked about in the previous video. We got hand grenades, and as I mentioned previously, flame throwers. Yeah, these suck too, but were mainly used in close range, when in close range with the enemy. So we're talking no man's land and other opportunities. The flamethrowers specifically were used by the Germans to cause unbelievable damage to Allied forces upon reaching their trenches. So it's a flame, it's fire. You can imagine how that goes when it's being aimed. You can just imagine how that goes. So thirdly, the mobile field guns. These are machine guns and artillery. So these fired hundreds, so about 400 to 500 bullets a minute. Then there's the artillery, and I didn't know this before, but they encompass weapons like cannons, howitzers, mortars, and much more. So cannons, which you've seen if you've watched Pirates of the Caribbean, are to shoot projectiles, so that scary ball to the enemy. It's preferred as a direct fire weapon, which aims directly at visible targets. And although they were used a lot in the war, the celebrity weapons in this category were the howitzers and mortars. So what makes them so special? Well, the howitzers are like cannons. Honestly, everything is pretty much like a cannon, but specialized for different purposes. So this one is for indirect fire, so to hit targets that are obscured by, say, a trench or two. They are inclined at higher angles than mortars. They are used to fire at shorter ranges with incredible force. Given that they're lightweight, the firing power comes from the steep angle at which their projectiles are fired. One deadly, very large machine gun that was used was the Maxim gun. On the artillery weapon sides, we have the cannons, howitzers, and mortars, and they were shooting shells which contained gas and or shrapnel, which are essentially pieces of very dangerous things. I'm talking individual bullets and even iron filings. And these types of shells were actually advanced, so they were used way later in the war. And a shell is a very big version of a bullet. Basically, if you just see it, it just looks like a very big bullet. These artillery weapons were able to shoot at different angles with immense force through steeper angles sometimes. Among artillery weapons were the Germans' Big Bertha. It fired 108 kilogram shells over 132 kilometers. And for those of us who cannot visualize numbers that easily, 108 kilograms is basically the weight of a large sack of rice doubled. Now imagine that sack of rice has a bunch of steel, a bunch of bullets inside, maybe even has some incredibly dangerous poisonous gas, and that is shot over a distance that takes 2 hours to cover at speed limit in mere minutes, going into the atmosphere and down again to its target. So, oh my god, it can create craters as big as a small swimming pool, flatten buildings, and do not forget the blast radius from the shrapnels. Oh my god. When we talk about physics, imagine the force of a fast-moving train condensed into a single steel object the size of a small fridge, literally coming at you and everybody around you and the environment around you. And they expected that these soldiers would not be traumatized afterwards? Oh my gosh. So when we get to the actual battles, maybe you could take that thing there or not. I mean, it's pretty bad. But this was definitely one of the worst in terms of artillery. Now, it kind of feels weird to move on after all that, but we have to because there's still a lot of things left. We're gonna talk about the poison gas. And this isn't just, I can't breathe gas either. It's that. Plus, I can't see because I'm losing my vision and I'm in pain from the burns all over my skin. It was in the words of a British Expeditionary Force BF commander, barbaric. They were used to demoralize and slow down the troops, and it was often paired with a creeping barrage, which is just an infantry force that moves through whatever distraction is taking place at the time, whether it's a bombardment of poisonous gas or artillery fire. The different types of gas, they were mustard, phosphorus, and chlorine gas, which, though its use was started by Germany, they were like, if you can't beat them, join them. Soon enough, the other great powers were using it too. Also pretty barbaric. But with advancements in tech also came more advancements in tech. Great. So the attacks were pretty bad. But soon enough, scientists were able to develop effective masks that protected the soldiers. The weather also helped in attacks. For example, cold, damp weather meant that the gas moved slower and at knee level. And the miscalculated positioning meant that if one side threw gas bombs and meant for the gas to move in a particular direction, the wind would blow it elsewhere. Turns out the wind had zero loyalty to either side. Ain't Mother Nature just great? Now finally, we're talking about tanks. I will talk about when they were used in another video because I'm annoying like that. Hey, damn, stop it! They were first used in 1916 by the British at the Battle of the Somme. You're welcome. Girl, we've been gone for a year, all because of you, and now you just want to show up and ruin my flow? See you on the next one. Well, since she said it, yeah, it's true. The British did that and they managed to ride through a couple of German trenches and push them back. You could say they ended the stalemate. Not really, it was still pretty bad, but the tanks were something. Don't forget to tell them what the Germans did. Yeah, this is my channel and my content. Go make your own if you want to talk. Sorry. Anyway, I had something planned to say before talking about that. Anyways, they look like a rhombus. Anyway, The Germans loved the new tech, so they decided to steal it, because why not? Anyway, that's pretty much all about tanks I want to talk about in this video. The Germans would get to use their own in 1918. They took better late than never to heart. Ugh. Anyway, so yeah, just like that, we're done with the weapons. Moving on to the quiz. So, we're gonna be switching it up a little bit. Usually, I just give you all the answers and move on with my merry way into the bliss and nether that is the YouTube place of inconsistency. But today, I've decided to do something different. So, I'm gonna ask you questions that I haven't even shown you the answers to in this video. So the answers are actually, you're gonna get the answers after I'm done with the question. So it's like teaching with exercises, kind of. I'm not even a teacher. I don't even know what the I'm talking about. Anyway, what was a primary advantage of machine guns in World War I? See, you know what I'm talking about? I didn't talk nothing about that. I barely talk about machine guns, let's be real. A, they were light and easy to carry across battlefields. B, they could fire hundreds of rounds per round, creating deadly zones of fire. They were immune to jamming or overheating. They were highly accurate over long distances. Okay, I think I've given you time. So, do you want the answers? Of course you do. You're here. You're listening to me. Of course you want the answers. Alright, so number 2. Which gas was first used by Germany during World War I in 1915, causing mass casualties? Was it mustard gas, chlorine gas, phosgene gas, or sarin gas? Now, number 3. What was a major weakness of tanks during their first deployment in World War I? A, they were too slow and often broke down. B, they were ineffective at crossing trenches. C, they required large crews to operate, making them vulnerable. And D, they had no armor and were easy to destroy. Number 4. What was the primary goal of a quote-unquote dogfight during aerial combat in World War I? A, to protect ground troops from enemy fire. B, to shoot down enemy aircraft and gain air superiority. C, to attack naval fleets from above. Or D, to drop bombs directly on trenches. 5. What role did artillery play in trench warfare during World War I? A, artillery was used primarily for defending trenches from incoming enemy troops. B, artillery was the primary offensive weapon used to destroy trenches and barbed wire before infantry attacks. C, artillery was a psychological weapon only, meant to demoralize the enemy. D, artillery was only effective against tanks, not the infantry. Not at all. Now, do you want answers? Of course you want answers. If you got this far, honestly, dude, thank you. Appreciate you. For number 1, the answer is B. They could fire hundreds of rounds per minute, creating deadly zones of fire. So, machine guns would deliver a clean swoop, you could say, of fire towards the incoming soldiers. Add to that the fact that both sides had access to this kind of technology, and then you can hopefully understand why there was a stalemate for much of the war. The answer is not A, because machine guns were definitely not light. Oh, heck no. They were not like those in video games of today. They actually required multiple soldiers to carry, set up, and operate. Therefore, not my English coming through, they were not easy to carry across the battlefield. Let's get that thing clear. So this was a disadvantage. The answer is not C, because they were once again prone to jamming and overheating. This reminds me of Chicken Invaders. Why am I making references to Chicken Invaders? And the overheat message that would pop up if you would shoot continuously. That's why the tactic is to single click shoot. Oh my god, why am I talking about this? The answer is not D, because they were not designed to shoot accurately over long distances, but rather rapid fire over a wide area. If you wanted accurate shooting, that's what you got rifles for. For number 2, the correct answer is chlorine gas, B, which, if I remember correctly from chemistry class, looks green. Anyway, this one damaged the respiratory system, which often resulted in, death. Mustard gas actually came way later in the war, which actually caused the chemical burns and also respiratory problems that I've previously talked about. Phosgene gas was another deadly gas, but once again, it was used later in the years of the war. It actually caused more deaths than chlorine gas. And finally, sarin gas didn't even exist at the time. It actually came up in 1930. So that's a little trick question for you. With number 3, there is one and only one true outlier. Their major weakness was, and the major weakness exhibited by the mighty technological advancement that is tanks during the Great War was speed and technical issues. Mechanical issues, to be specific. They were able to sometimes cross trenches, even though they were literally designed to. But whatever, the main weakness is just the fact that they were too slow, okay? Who cares about crossing the trench when you can't even get there quick enough, okay? No, without breaking down. So yeah, the whole required large crews to operate thing is false. They only really needed a few people, 3 to 5, which, you know, is kind of a lot, but it's not really compared. You know, it's a big machine you need. Anyway, tanks, though having thinner armor than later models, definitely had strong enough armor to not be as easily destroyed by bullets and shrapnel than, let's say, as humans during infantry attacks. So yeah, that's the answer. That. Number 4, people. Dogfights. It's literally in the question. The sole purpose of aircraft during dogfights was to shoot down other enemy aircraft. It was for the air race. Get it? Because there was an arms race and a naval race, so air race. Anyways, so different, you could say, departments were in charge of attacking the naval fleets, dropping bombs, and protecting the troops. But those in charge of dogfights would literally fight other planes in the air. Yeah. Number 5. Freaking finally, artillery was an offensive weapon. Soldiers would bombard enemy positions, destroy barbed wire fences, and create an opening for the infantry in a sort of creeping barrage, as I've mentioned. They were like the enzymes in your mouth that digest food before the stomach takes care of the rest and the small intestines. Okay, what the is that analogy? But like, it makes sense, right? Creeping barrages works in stages. It weakens the defenses of the other side, just as digestion weakens, or not weakens, but softens food. Okay, moving on. Machine guns and rifle fire. Interesting enough, they were used for defense, and while it certainly had a psychological effect on the soldiers, it was mainly meant to inflict casualties and destroy enemy positions, not just intimidate. And finally, artillery was effective for both tanks and infantry. Girl! And you thought I was done? Do you even know me? You don't. Bonus questions. Which of these was not a common method of fighting World War I? A. Trench warfare. B. Guerrilla warfare. C. Poison gas attacks. D. Infantry charges. For this section, and I didn't know what in the heckaroonie guerrilla warfare was until Oversimplified's video. I believe it was on the Cold War. But anyways, it's basically hit and run attacks by smaller forces against larger organized armies. So, like, think of communists against the Americans in Vietnam, or Mao Zedong's Red Army against Chiang Kai-shek's more equipped army. So, guerrilla warfare is the answer, and not the rest, because we have been talking about those as the methods for the whole video. Okay, thanks y'all. See you or not on the next one. Y'all don't know how I look like, and you never will. Oh, my outro. This is me. Here's a nugget. Here's another. Bye-bye, ghoul. Also, I recently watched... brother, why am I talking about this? Ah!